Have you ever stopped to think that this relentless voice in your head, this constant chatter that follows you around, maybe it's not really you? What if the key to inner peace and a true spiritual awakening lies precisely in observing this mental babble without identifying with it? The truth is, this restless mind has deep roots, but there's a way to observe it without drowning in this whirlwind. A way to find clarity in the midst of chaos. Stay tuned, because what we're about to explore could change your relationship with your own thoughts. Jiddu Krishnamurti invited us to a profound observation of the mind, and it's this journey of self-knowledge that we're going to embark on together. Prepare to question the illusion of control and find a genuine spiritual awakening. This video is an invitation to inner silence and mindfulness. Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle of repetitive thoughts, like a scratched record that keeps playing the same tune? The anxiety that tightens your chest, the insecurity that insists on whispering doubts in your ear. Who hasn't been there? In a world that bombards us with information and demands relentless productivity, our mind becomes a battlefield where countless voices compete for our attention. But what if I told you there's a way out of this whirlwind, a way to find an oasis of peace in the midst of this chaos? Just as Jiddu Krishnamurti warned us, we often identify so deeply with the flow of our thoughts that we believe we are this constant agitation. We create the illusion of a controlling self, a conductor trying to lead an out-of-tune orchestra of ideas and worries. But the big insight, the first step towards spiritual awakening, lies in questioning this very identity. Who is this self that clings to thoughts, that struggles against the mental chatter? It's not about forcing the mind to be silent, which often only generates more frustration, but rather about learning to observe the movement of thoughts with the same curiosity and detachment with which we observe the clouds in the sky. Let's demystify the idea that a calm mind is an empty mind, and discover how mental clarity can blossom when we learn to simply be with what arises, without judgment and without the constant need for control. And to begin this journey of discovery, let's dive into the first great illusion that our mind creates, the illusion that there is a separate self in control of everything. You know that feeling of saying, "I am anxious," or "I am impatient." It seems like a definitive description, something that defines us, doesn't it? But what if that identification was the trap itself? Imagine a rushing river. The water flows constantly, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but never stagnant. Would you say that the river is the wave that passes, or that it's the foam that forms for a moment? In the same way, our thoughts and emotions are like this constant flow, in perpetual change. When we cling to a thought, to an emotion, and say, "I am this," we are identifying with something transient, fixing ourselves on a single frame of a movie that never stops rolling. Jiddu Krishnamurti offered us a revolutionary perspective when he stated, "The thinker is the thought." This phrase, at first glance, may seem enigmatic, but it dismantles the duality that we often perceive between the one who thinks and what is thought. There is no separate self, controlling or being tormented by thoughts. The thinker is part of the very process of thinking. It's like trying to separate the wave from the ocean. This understanding invites us to a profound self-observation. Instead of drowning in the current of thoughts, we can place ourselves on the bank and simply watch the flow pass by, without clinging to any specific thought, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Try this for a moment. Observe a thought arise, linger, and dissipate. Try not to judge it, not to analyze it, just witness its passage. You begin to realize that you are the consciousness that observes, the space where these thoughts arise and disappear, and not the thought itself. This distinction is fundamental to begin our spiritual awakening. But if we are not this controlling self that clings to thoughts, why then does our mind seem so incessantly busy? The answer may lie in primal feelings that accompany us. Often, the root of this mental chatter lies in our deepest fears and insecurities. Loneliness haunts us, The fear of failure paralyzes us. The incessant search for validation imprisons us in the opinions of others. This stream of anxious and worried thoughts arises as an attempt to protect us, to anticipate dangers, to fill an inner void. It's as if the mind is constantly seeking solutions to problems that often don't even exist in the present. This search for security and acceptance also finds fertile ground in the digital world. The constant comparison on social media, the pressure for toxic productivity that demands us to be always doing and achieving, further fuel this emotional insecurity and existential fear. We cling to distractions, to notifications, to an endless flow of information as a way to avoid confronting our own silence, our own vulnerabilities. Jiddu Krishnamurti touched on this crucial point when he said that occupation is a flight from fear. Keeping constantly busy, whether with work, entertainment, or with mental agitation itself, can be a way to avoid feeling, to not face the roots of our suffering. But true courage lies precisely in quieting this agitation, in diving into inner silence, not as an absence, but as a space of welcoming and understanding. It is in this silence that we can begin to recognize the origins of our fears and insecurities, without letting ourselves be carried away by the mental chatter they generate. But how can we, in fact, access this inner silence amidst the whirlwind of thoughts? A powerful practice invites us to change our relationship with this mental agitation. Often, when we hear about mindfulness or attention, the image that comes to mind is that of a completely empty mind, a state of forced stillness. But this is a misconception. Mindfulness is not about fighting against mental chatter to try to silence it, which would be like trying to stop the wind with your hands. Instead, it invites us to change our relationship with thoughts, to observe them with curiosity and gentleness, as if we were watching the traffic of our mind. Imagine yourself at the edge of a busy road. Cars, motorcycles, and trucks pass incessantly. You don't try to stop the flow, nor do you identify with each vehicle that passes. You simply observe the movement. Mindfulness proposes this same posture in relation to our thoughts. They come and go, carrying with them worries, memories, judgments. Our practice consists of witnessing this flow without clinging to any particular thought, without letting ourselves be carried away by its story. A practical exercise to cultivate this presence is to focus on breathing. Feel the air entering and leaving your body. Observe the natural rhythm of your inhalation and exhalation. When the mind wanders, which will inevitably happen, simply bring your attention back to your breath, with gentleness and without self-criticism. This simple act of anchoring attention in the present helps us create a space between us and our mental chatter. Jiddu Krishnamurti taught us that true attention is the end of chatter. When we are fully present, observing the present moment without judgment, the need for a constant mental narrative dissolves. There is no attachment to positive thoughts nor rejection of negative ones. There is only the direct experience of now. There is only the direct experience of now. And this direct experience of now becomes more accessible when we cultivate something essential within ourselves. Have you ever felt suffocated in a room full of objects, where there's barely space to move? Our mind can become a similar place, filled with thoughts, worries, and memories that oppress us and prevent us from experiencing clarity and inner peace. The search for spiritual awakening inevitably involves the creation and expansion of our inner space. Imagine a room with various objects scattered around. The more things clutter the space, the less the feeling of freedom and the harder it becomes to find what we're looking for. Similarly, when our mind is overloaded with information and incessant thoughts, inner silence becomes elusive and mental clarity is lost in the noise. Activities such as spending time in nature, taking conscious breaks throughout the day, and practicing meditation are powerful ways to expand this inner space. Nature invites us to contemplation, breaks allow us to breathe and recenter, and meditation helps us create a healthy distance between the observer and the observed, between us and the flow of our thoughts. When we cultivate this inner space, we begin to realize that we are not our thoughts. There is a vast consciousness, a profound silence that permeates everything, where thoughts arise and disappear like waves in an ocean. It is in this silence that inner conflicts dissolve, because the need to fight against mental chatter simply disappears. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Cultivating one inner space is expanding that interval. It is increasing our freedom of choice and our ability to respond to life with more awareness and serenity. And this ability to respond with more awareness and serenity blossoms through a continuous journey. The process of self-knowledge is like peeling an onion. The mind has countless layers of beliefs, conditioning, fears, and identifications that obscure our true nature. It is not a journey with a predefined final destination, but rather a continuous exploration, a curious investigation into who we really are behind these layers. Practices such as honest self-reflection, therapeutic writing, and deep conversations with trusted people can help us bring to light these patterns of thought and behavior that often operate on autopilot. The goal is not to judge these patterns, but to recognize them with gentleness and understanding. As Lao Tzu reminded us, silence is a source of great strength. By quieting ourselves and observing carefully, the answers about ourselves begin to emerge. The key to transformation does not lie in trying to change who we think we are, but in understanding the nature of our thoughts and emotions. As Eckhart Tolle wisely put it, the observer is the observed. The simple observation of the mind, without the filter of judgment or identification, already begins a process of liberation. When we understand that mental chatter is just background noise and that we don't need to identify with every thought that arises, the need for control diminishes and a space of freedom opens up. Therefore, self-knowledge is not about achieving a state of perfection or the absence of thoughts. It is about developing a different relationship with our mind, a relationship based on mindfulness and self-observation. It is a continuous path of discovery, where freedom is not a destination, but the natural result of deeply observing what already is. Throughout this journey, we explored the illusion of the self as controller, unraveled the role of fear and insecurity in incessant mental chatter, recognized the power of mindfulness as a tool for observing the active mind, understood the importance of cultivating inner space, and embraced self-knowledge as a continuous transformation. Remember, spiritual awakening is not a distant destination, reserved for a few enlightened individuals. It is accessible here and now, in the simple act of observing your own mind with curiosity and gentleness. The invitation is for you to begin practicing this observation in your daily life, in moments of calm and also in the midst of the whirlwind of thoughts. And what if I told you that all you need is not to drastically change who you are, but just to observe deeply what already is? The root of all suffering is identification with the body and the mind. Buddha. If you felt touched by these words, I invite you to take the next step on this journey of self-discovery. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue this path of spiritual growth with us. Leave your experiences with silencing the mind in the comments and how IT has been a teacher for your own awakening. Let's grow together, not only in mind, but in heart. And if you still want to delve deeper into this process, watch our video, Mindfulness Expert Reveals Secret to a Quiet Mind, which will help you understand more about how silence manifests. Peace and light.